Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Enough to Keep Going podcast. This is episode number 255 for August 21st, 2022. I'm your host, TomMaster99, and we've got a full crew here tonight. Well, more or less full crew, I should say. First up, we have Mr. DBQ Hams. DB, how you doing? It's been a while since we've been on the podcast together.
It has, and good eating to you as well. I mean, evening. So yes, it has been some good eating this weekend. We had a family event today, and instead of staying up late last night to play video games, I was staying up late nursing my smoker and 4 chickens. So, which was delicious today. But yes, that was so yes, we did have some good eating.
It was good evening.
Yeah.
That's good. And of course we have Mr. Game Logic. Game, how are you doing? Any good eats today?
Now we ordered Indian last night, so I had a little bit of those for leftovers today. So I guess that's been good enough.
It's been good enough. That's good. I went to a carnival today, so I had some carnival food, which was fine. That's good. It's not too bad to have that every once in a while. But this is not the food podcast. No, this is our video game podcast, and we're going to jump into some games here right now. Game, I don't know if you want to go first, or I can jump in real quick if you're still getting things ready behind the scene.
I know, I'm good. I can go. So first up, I guess in my report out tonight is I've been playing OlliOlli World on the Nintendo Switch. So this is a game that I talked about a little bit earlier this year. I'd been playing on PC, and so with the recent acquisition of the Nintendo Switch OLED, OlliOlli World was just something that I really wanted to get into. I'm actually going to be playing it on Xbox as well, and that was the point where I pulled up Chocks on it. I was like, I'm not also going to play it on any other platform, but it's kind of weird. Again, I've not been really a really super huge fan of playing in handheld mode, and or just undocked at all. But I actually played it undocked in handheld mode, and right now it actually feels more intuitive to play it that way than it does, on a large screen with a controller, or for the Nintendo Switch kind of in easel mode with a Pro controller. So I found that pleasantly amusing. It looks great. You would worry about, slightly lower graphical fidelity or whatever on the Nintendo Switch. But again, with that display kind of right in your face, and the colors really pop on an OLED. I think when I played it on PC, I don't think I played it on HDR monitors. So again, it was really, really super impressive. I had to check to make sure it wasn't a cloud-enabled version. It's not. There was a little sticking in the, I think, DBQ, you're familiar, like when you complete a level and it kind of does that screen wipe, and there are kind of some dynamic graphics as it cuts to the next level or brings you back to the map. There's a little bit of a stick that you can see. But other than that, it's a really, really pleasant experience. But it's totally performant, like when you're actually playing the game. So it's a good deal. Really happy with it.
So playing on the PS5, which I did this spring, when was it? January, February it came out. It was instantaneous on the crash to restart. Like, it was pretty quick. Is there loading, or is it still right? The graphical fidelity is nice, but as long as it's running smoothly, I mean, that's the key about some of those tricks and keeping that flow together.
Yeah, I didn't have any load time slowdown of any note. And again, I'm playing it kind of the same way I was before, where I'm kind of insistent right now on a run being perfect. I'm sure that I will, if I remember correctly, I eventually hit a point pretty far into the game, admittedly, but I do eventually hit a point, or maybe just when I'm playing late at night, then I'm like, I'm not worrying about a perfect run. But for those cases, I'm gonna do a perfect run in each one, and so I'm not gonna do any restarts from kind of the middle of any given map. And so I did have to go all the way back to the beginning at one point, and there wasn't any wait time of any note. I didn't have time to put the Switch down or anything like that. So it seems pretty performant so far.
Nice.
So I appreciate that in the week that Roller Dome came out from Roll 7, that you go back and play their last game with OlliOlli World. So nice developer callback.
Yeah, I like the good old trials mentality too of doing the perfect runs. I always was doing that. Did you play any of the original 1 or 2 of OlliOlli?
I did not, so this is my first
All right.
onboarding.
I think you had.
Yeah.
All right, cool. All right, I'm going to jump in here now. I have been playing a couple. Actually, no, I'm sorry. I have played one Switch game this past couple weeks, and I went back into Splatoon 2 after the actually even before the Splatoon 3 direct that they had recently. I just went out and jumped back in there, and that's about a month away, I believe, or so, maybe a little bit less than that. So I wanted to go back and kind of get my feet wet, as it were, trying out the multiplayer. I did a little bit of the single player when I originally picked it up, and that was way back. I think that was one of my first games besides Zelda Breath of the Wild that I got for the Switch when I picked my Switch up eventually. So I want to jump back in just to kind of get used to the controls and stuff. I never did get used to the motion controls in that game for some reason. I couldn't do it. I think it's maybe because it's a little bit more fast paced than like I've done it with Breath of the Wild and some of the other games and like Skyrim and stuff. But I think everything's moving so fast. I couldn't get used to it using the gyroscope controls and just the motion controls. So I had to turn that off eventually, and I had to made sure it was still turned off when I got back in there. But I played a few matches. I've been playing it kind of off and on these past couple weeks. So I just kind of getting back into the groove of that, and I did download there's a Splatoon 3, I believe, a Splat test. I think coming this week. I believe
so. End of the 20s, right?
Yeah.
Beginning of next week.
Yeah, so I have that downloaded. You can download that already if you've. I think you have to be an online member, a Nintendo Online member, I believe, to get that. Or at least you can if you are subscribed to the online service there for Nintendo. So I did that, and you just you can click on it, but it just tells you can't get you can't access it right now. So it's just on there, and I think I might have done that for Splatoon 2 too, but I never had a chance to do that since I didn't have the system right away. But I'm looking forward to it. I wasn't the best. It wasn't the greatest at Splatoon 2. I never played the first one back on the Wii U, so Splatoon 2 was my first one. But I have fun because it's not so much killing people. You obviously want to color up your part of the map, and actually all the map as much as you can get to. There's certain parts I don't think you can get to. So it's just kind of fun to have that kind of, I guess, more of an objective instead of just getting rid of everybody on the map. So been having a lot of fun with that. And then I also tried out Turbo Golf Racing, which is the golf kind of Rocket League.
Well, Tom, before you go into that one, so
yeah.
So now, first of all, the demos or whatever for Splatoon 2 and Splatoon 3, and I don't know if DBQ, they're different approaches to the demo, right? Splatoon 2 was a global test fire, and then isn't Splatoon 3 the Splatfest? Isn't that more focused on the single player campaign, or is this one another multiplayer trial?
I think it's another multiplayer because usually a Splatfest is like you pick a side and they tally up the winners over the course, pizza or hot dog or cake or pie, whatever it was in the past. And, then whoever wins the most on that side ends up the winner of that Splatfest. So it usually is, it's a it's a server test.
Okay. And then, what was the other thing I was going to ask you? So, and then you mentioned the motion controls, I guess the gyroscope controls. So, one game that I won't talk about tonight that I have been playing a little bit on the Nintendo Switch also is Crysis Remastered. And same thing, I immediately disabled the gyroscope because I just hate motion controls in general. I never use them at all whatsoever. Other than, when I used to play VR because you didn't have any other choice. Are there any first-person shooters on the Nintendo Switch where you leave motion controls on?
Not shooter, but Skyrim, I'll leave it on and use it for, like, when you're using the bow and arrow. I used to use it in Fortnite, The only reason I turned it off because when my son's friends come over, they'd use my Switch and they didn't like using that, so I'd have to turn it off constantly. So I was like, I'm just gonna leave it off, not turn it back on. But I used to actually use it a lot in Fortnite, and that was more or less just when you had like the sniper scope, because that was the only scoped weapon that you had, so it was a little easier to aim with the gyroscope, which actually was kind of nice. But like I said, I haven't had it on for a while, and now there's more scoped weapons in there, so I don't know how that would work. If it'd be the same or not. So, but I didn't have any problems in those two games. But yeah, this one I don't know why I just can't do it. I think it's because it's always on. Like it's always on. Like whether you're like zoomed in or not with something. So it just kind of throws me off.
Okay, gotcha.
Nice. All right. Yeah. So my next game, Turbo Golf Racing. So kind of like golf. It's kind of like a Rocket League, but with golf. From a different developer. Actually, I forgot I was going to look up the developer, but. And this is on Xbox Series X. I played it actually through xCloud. I didn't install it at all. I just played it straight through the streaming service. And it's actually, I only played like maybe a handful of games, maybe 5 or 6 altogether over a few days. It's like 2 or 3 days. But it was pretty fun. I was kind of surprised. The controls themselves, like the way the car handles, is definitely very, very different from Rocket League. It wasn't as tight. It wasn't as it's a little more loose. Like you turn and you like almost like totally like flip around, so that the controls are a little loose. I don't know if that was just like a sensitivity thing that maybe I can kind of control in the settings. But I did have a little bit of trouble at first, and it took me a while. It took me a few games before I kind of got used to that. The way it handled, because I was thinking Rocket League, but it's not Rocket League. It's it's a different game. But so you just kind of have this big long course, and I think there's 4 or 5 people all together racing at the same time, and you have to just get to the goal, get to the hole, and just hit it in there basically. So you got like power ups and stuff that you can hit, and there's like turbo pads and all these other kind of things. But it's pretty fun, and it's a fairly long course, so it's not like it's done in like like 5 or 10 seconds. So you go for a couple minutes, and I think maybe because the way, or at least for me, the way the cars were handling too, it took me a little while to get to that hole at first, because I like try to hit it straight, and also I'm like turning and like knock it off the course, or just knock it somewhere I didn't want it to go. But it was pretty fun though. I liked it. I'll keep playing it. I thought I had some other people that wanted to play it too. I got to see if they want to actually jump into it. Might be a little bit more fun with a group. Obviously, most of the time those kind of games are a lot more fun with people, But we'll have to see. And then just. They have a battle pass, of course, and there's like a free version, and you can buy the battle pass to get like the premium stuff. Talking about battle pass stuff actually later on. But yeah, I mean it's all cosmetic once again, just toppers and for your car, or different skins and different colors. So kind of the normal fare as far as like a battle pass goes. But yeah, it's pretty fun. I'm gonna keep trying it, and probably not gonna replace Rocket League, but it'll definitely be a fun kind of distraction, like when I'm kind of like have my moments with Rocket League, because sometimes I'm like really on, but when I'm off, I'm like really off. So maybe I'll jump over to Turbo Golf Racing and try that. But definitely going to keep going on with that one. Any questions on that one? Oh,
yeah, I've got questions. First off, I love the game art of this one, because if this was like mid 90s and you're walking through a video store, it looks like the knockoff Rocket League game, just by the art of it. But so what I want to know is, are you all trying to hit the same ball, or do you all have your own balls that you're trying to hit into the hole? And okay, so answer that question first, because then it's very essential to the next part of the question. Like, I'm trying to figure this out logistically. Like, is everybody chasing the same ball, or do you all start off with your own ball on the tee type of thing?
No, you each have your own ball, and as far as I could tell, you couldn't like interfere with somebody else's ball, which I thought was kind of weird. Like I kind of figured that would be a thing, but it's not. At least not right now. Maybe like in updates or something. But
do you run into other people? Like if you're all chasing toward the hole, can you bump into somebody else in like a speed golf type of way? Or
I don't know if I've actually hit another person. I don't know if that's possible or not. I mean, with a power up, with the different power ups you got. But yeah, I physically, like if I like hit somebody, I don't think I actually ever did that, just because I was concentrating on like get my ball like get down the course. So
Okay. Well, you've intrigued me enough to download the knockoff box art and give it a try.
Yeah, yeah, I definitely say give it a try. It's like I said, it's pretty fun. I was kind of surprised just because I was like, oh, it's not too bad. It's not just like it's not. I mean, it is basically a Rocket League rip off, but it's a pretty good one though. I definitely recommend at least trying it since it's on Game Pass, so it's not too bad of a deal. Speaking of which, you've jumped straight in to football season. I see here a little bit early actually, jumping into Madden 23.
Yes. This is the annual Let DBQ Complain About Madden episode, and this is the first time since Madden 18 that I've purchased the game before it went free. Usually I can nurse my 10 hours along, right? You get the 10 hours through EA Play and now through Game Pass with EA Play. And this year it feels, I like what they've done. I like what they've done in a lot of different ways. There's still some problems, surprise. But I'll just give a couple highlights. I mean, because it is still Madden. You know what you're getting. Ultimate Team has not changed drastically. It's pretty much the same thing. Franchise is there. One of the big changes in franchise is that they've added player tags and kind of categories within free agency, so that you can tag somebody on your team as like, the backup or a mentor or, the kind of placeholder in a transition year. But those types of things still also play out in free agency, where free agency, you can have somebody who wants to be, they have different impetuses for why they will sign. Maybe they want to sign because they want to be a starter, or they want the most money, or they want to play it for a franchise or for a Super Bowl contender, or they want to play close to home or in a state with no income tax. So they have a whole lot of, so even if you have salary cap based on what your franchise is and who your players are, you may no longer be able to sign the people that you could have signed in past iterations of this, which is, a whole lot more realistic, that some people are just not going to be interested in your franchise for whatever reason, even if you've got the cap space. And in the past, if you had the cap space and you could outbid the other teams, that was pretty much the way you were going to get it. And the other piece of this in the free agency is that you can, instead of kind of bidding for everybody or putting offers in on everybody that you can, they've got, the first few days of free agency, you only can put in 3 offers. They kind of, you have time before free agency officially opens that you can be talking with people and get kind of verbal agreements, but it kind of forces you to kind of pick and choose who you want to spend your time going after, rather than just kind of treating it like a menu option and going through all your stats. So it modifies that in that way. Right now, there's still some logic problems in the free agency. Like Justin Herbert from the Chargers is getting released after the end of the first year. Number of kind of high 80s, early 90s people, Stephon Diggs, that whether it's a team that doesn't have whatever the algorithm is in terms of what they would be asking for, and it's too much of a binary straight salary cap piece right now. Like there should be some franchise logic that would tag people as, not necessarily put a franchise tag on somebody, but these are key players to the franchise that they would bend over and restructure things to stick around, rather than just a yes, no, if they hit a salary cap threshold. So there's been some talk about that online. There's some kind of crazy examples of people being released, but that seems like something that can be patched. There wasn't a day one patch. They are working on a few patches, according to Reddit and Twitter, things like that. So there's some good stuff happening in franchise. It doesn't drastically change. There's a little bit within scouting that's improved, which was nice, because it was a little more arbitrary last year in terms of what statistics you would kind of reveal. And now you reveal, like for your quarterback, you could reveal what their tackling statistic was, which really isn't that helpful. Like and you could scout somebody, and now they kind of prioritize what are the skill ratings for that position. So for a defender, yeah, tackling makes sense. For a quarterback, it should be pass accuracy or strength or stamina. And those things will be the first things to be revealed as you start scouting somebody. There's Franks of the Franchise mode, which is kind of, it's their story mode. This year you come in as a fifth year on a 1-year contract, and you can kind of choose between quarterback, wide receiver, running back, D-back, so a cornerback or a linebacker. And you get kind of contract options and interest from each of the teams. And so I did a quarterback and kind of signed myself to the Colts under Matt Ryan. And, there's some contrivances that allow you to get potentially the starting position. But I played the first 3 preseason games and threw 11 interceptions in 3 games. And so I cut myself because no story is going to keep this 5th-year quarterback around after that type of showing. And really, that's the big piece here in Madden 23 is the defenders' awareness and AI is much more improved. Like the passing windows are a lot tighter. Things that were open in the last 2 years, I've had D-backs close in and either swat it down or make a pick. That there's a number of complaints in Reddit about interceptions being too high at this point. There's sliders that you can turn, but it really forces you to hone your windows of passing. You can't just kind of lob it out there. And that also comes in with kind of the big passing improvement of this iteration is basically you have kind of you can do the traditional button, or you can do a kind of a precision passing where it gives you a cone of where that pass could go. And then if you hold down the left trigger, you can actually move another little reticle a little bit outside of that, or just in a certain spot within the cone if you want to hit behind the receiver or lead them a little further. So you have more control over your passing windows, which then kind of counters the increased effectiveness of your safeties and defensive backs. So it forces you to lead somebody a little bit more, or if they're in tight man coverage, to throw it behind them a little bit and have them come back. Like there is more nuance there, and that feels different for the first time in a generation, right? I think 2018 Madden 18 they changed over to Frostbite engine, and the running game felt really different. There was momentum, there were physics there in a way that there weren't before, and this really changes the passing game from somebody who's, over the last couple seasons with friends throwing 6,000 yards, because you've just figured it out with the traditional thing. And now this adds a whole new wrinkle. So that's kind of why I ended up churning through my 10 hours and saying, yeah, I can see myself spending more time with this.
Is this one was still next gen, right? I mean, last gen?
It's both last gen and
okay.
Yeah. Yep. And I think the precision passing is maybe only in next gen.
So there's some things they take away then.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely there's other physics that are different. I mean, a lot of the other so a number of things are specific to the new generation versus the kind of fresh coat of paint and maybe some of the franchise pieces that the tags I think I'm not even sure on that one, but yeah, there is a difference between last gen and current gen.
Okay, cool. Have you had a chance to play with anybody else, like multiplayer with us yet? No.
Nope. I compared to 2 years ago when I was complaining about the graphical glitches and having a all black screen and white outlines of characters and clipping through the field, this is in a much better state than release windows of Madden's past. So
What graphical mode are you playing in, DB? Are you playing 4K 60?
I have not played with that yet. I think I'm playing in 4K 60. My TV doesn't go all the way up to 120 anyways, but I'm going to try performance just to see if I notice any differences, especially given how tight the passing windows are, that having a better frame rate is going to be beneficial there. So yes, that's one thing I haven't really had a chance to play around with.
All right, nice. All right, let's jump into some news now. Game Logic, you got some news from Burnout and Need for Speed developers.
So announced, I guess about maybe a week and a half ago, some developers who are veterans of, it's actually the original founders of Criterion, Alex Ward and Fiona Sperry, have got a studio up and running, and they are working on a game called Wreckreation, which is kind of a spiritual convergence, maybe, of Burnout and Need for Speed, as they were both they were at Criterion when they were working on both series. Series has 6 different event types of modes, and it is an open world racer. Yay, streamers, parades. Maybe not, because Burnout Paradise was not... Actually, Burnout Paradise actually turned me off to the idea of open world racers, and then when I played Forza Motorsport, Forza Horizon, I was convinced that all open world racers do not have to be bad. It features some radio channels in there, kind of again a la Burnout Paradise as well as Forza Horizon. And if you don't like those channels, you can stream Spotify. And that's supported in game. Of course, you could obviously stream Spotify over any game that you wanted to, depending on what system you were on. But they're going to facilitate it. This, by the way, is a game that is published by THQ Nordic. The studio is called Three Fields Entertainment, and that brings up an interesting note. There's been a lot of kind of weird feelings about Embracer Group as of late, given their acquisition of, I guess it was a WB studio.
No, didn't they pick up the Lord of the Rings license?
They did. I thought there was a studio that they picked up along with it as well. I could be wrong.
It seems possible. It's the Embracer Group. Yeah,
I thought there was definitely a studio that went along with it, and they may not have revealed the name of the studio. But suddenly, gamers who have been ignoring Embracer Group and the monstrous acquisitions that they've been on, I think they own like 100. Do they own over 100 studios now?
I think they came out and announced like they were. There was some number just barely over 100, but yes, It was kind of surprising to the extent.
Yeah. Now, of course, they count a studio as like a one-person mom and pop shop, right? Studio, so it's a studio of variable size. But I mean, THQ has long been one of my favorite. It was one of my favorite studios before the dissolution, and they, at least that part of the business, which originally the entire conglomerate carried the THQ label, and that was one of the things that they separated when they went with the Embracer name. And so now when I look at THQ games, I feel like they're back in that ballpark of kind of what I liked, which is they are sharp games, good games that are not necessarily feeding on the kind of mass commercial. They're not making like the MCU of video games, right? Like EA and Activision, and even Xbox and SIE often do, just kind of Ubisoft falling into that rut of a pattern of a common set of games, of a common set of characteristics that they tend to have on offer. THQ feels like they kind of come, at their titles with a little variation and a little something different than the mainstream. So I am a fan of at least that studio. And, Embracer Group is kind of working on things that are a little off the beaten path. Back to Wreckreation, no licensed vehicles in this, so much like Burnout, it will be vehicles that kind of seem akin to commercial vehicles, but they are not the actual vehicles. And potentially this game will be out before the end of the year. So people who are kind of built in that mold of, there are tons of gamers that miss the old Burnout series. Criterion's swags at kind of making Burnout Need for Speed. I was never particularly happy or impressed with. So, it'll be interesting to kind of see if this game kind of goes back to the original formula. This studio has been around since 2014, and they've actually put out a handful of titles. None of any that I've played. And I suspect that based on the title names that they're maybe on mobile. But there we are, potentially, racer built in kind of the Burnout mold coming out this year. Game is coming to PlayStation 4, PlayStation 5, Windows, Xbox One, and Xbox Series X. So, as Tal mentioned, about Madden, this will be another cross-gen game.
So this studio has done some. I mean, Dangerous Driving is pretty much classic Burnout. It is race to race. It's point to point, or not point to point, but it's you load into a race, you do the race, you jump back out into a menu, and you go on to the next one. It's not an open. Dangerous Golf was their first one. I remember that coming out. It was kind of the Burnout, destruction physics, but in a golfing game. Yeah, they've done their Dangerous Drivings. I've enjoyed them. They were definitely kind of lower budget titles, smaller, but they were effective in capturing kind of that Burnout Revenge, Burnout 3 type of kind of feel to them. So I didn't realize that this was potentially coming out in 2022 still.
Yeah, I guess there's like an Amazon listing, and they say in the article that kind of hints at that it might come out the end of the year. Yeah, I just think it's kind of cool that how you can like edit the track like as people are racing on it. So I thought that was kind of cool. It's kind of taking. I wonder if this kind of sprung up from kind of like GTA 5. Like there's a lot of videos out there on YouTube and other services, Twitch, I'm sure too, where they have like people racing people's like tracks that they've created, that people race and stuff. So I wonder if this kind of just takes it to the next level, or I mean, obviously maybe they've been working on this for a while too, but I just kind of interesting that that's what this is solely. I mean, you kind of see in some of the pictures on the article, like there's some wacky like loops and just like weird, like almost like you're like sideways as you're driving and stuff like that. So it just looks pretty cool. Kind of right up my alley, kind of in the vein of Wreckfest, because I've played a lot of that too. So it's very interesting.
The thing it made me think of was Split Second, actually. So, which was a racing game back in the PlayStation 3, Xbox 360 era. I think the latter half of that era, where the tracks were destructive, and so there were certain stunts and things you could do that would cause like an overpass to like collapse and then change the track. And I think there was a button you could push that would cause like some explosions or something like that, which would again kind of alter the nature of the track. So we'll see. I don't know that the editing options will be that complex or that high fidelity, for an in-game thing. So I wouldn't be surprised if it's more along the lines of kind of event triggers that you can pull to alter the track in certain specific ways, but we'll see.
Yes, definitely keeping that one on my radar. Hopefully that comes out this year, because there's really nothing I'm looking forward to the rest of the year as far as I can tell, other than Splatoon 3.
Is the Need for Speed title still on the slate for this year? I can't remember.
Heard anything from it? Yeah,
I think I remember it getting mentioned in the end of the fiscal year, like investor call, but I have not seen or heard anything since then.
Yeah, I'll have to look that up here in a second. But we got a couple of game announcements here. Game Logic, you got the first one. I guess a game release date for Jedi or Star Wars Jedi Survivor, potentially.
Yep, and just a note, EA did reaffirm that the next Need for Speed is still due to be released. They said they still haven't tightened up a date. They just say by the end of the year is what I'm finding here. Although we should keep looking. That might not be. This site isn't like one of the big ones, so it may be a little ambiguous. But one game that is coming out from EA is a Star Wars Jedi Survivor. And so this past week, there was a book that was announced that was going to be coming out, I think, in the March 2023 timeframe. And I would almost say friend of the show, Jeff Grubb, also mentioned that he has knowledge that that is when the game is supposed to also come out as well. I mean, we really don't have that much more to go on other than, recurring characters that we saw in the trailer. And I guess somebody who was seen in a back to tank, which isn't surprising. Back to tanks are all over the Star Wars universe, and they're par for the course. But that's the deal. I mean, next spring, again, as we mentioned last podcast, continues to appear to be the train wreck piling up on the track. And so, as I mentioned last week, it'll be interesting to see if these games actually come out, and it'll give us a chance to assess whether or not it's, when they claim to come out on odd years, they actually do come out, but when they claim to come out on even years, they don't. So we'll see how it goes. Got a lot of games coming out in that February-March time frame.
Yeah, I do continue to wonder how much of it'll be out by the end of the fiscal year is messaging for investors more than it is for players. Like, we don't really, it's just like the rumors around the remake of Knights of the Old Republic and whether or not it's being delayed, if it's moving to another developer, that as transitions happen, there's logical to be delays. As there's, development, there's been plenty of delays, but whether or not everything is actually going to come out in those windows, like we talked about last week, will be really interesting. It'll be an incredibly stacked calendar if that's the case. But then again, Marvel's Midnight Suns was supposed to come out in March of 2022, and now it's pegged to come out in March of 2023. So we will see.
Yes, definitely. And I still got to go back. Like most games I have right now, especially single player games, I got to get back to that one and finish it off. So, of the first one, playing that one on. Actually, I don't think I've ever tried playing that on my Xbox Series X, the original Fallen Order. I'll have to try that out.
It runs nicely. Yes.
Yeah. I mean, even
on the original Xbox, even on PC at the time, it runs much nicer.
Yeah, I remember I played a good bit of it on the series. I'm not the series, the One X. And I thought it looked great on that, so I can only imagine coming on the Series X how it's going to look. All right, so up next we have Death Stranding coming to Xbox Game Pass on the PC, though. It looks like, at least for now, it's just the PC version on August 23rd, so just a couple days. It was announced this past week, and I remember I think I was going to bed, I think right before the official announcement for this came out. And there was just like a, I don't know if it was from Kojima Studios or maybe Xbox over in Japan or something, but they had just like a picture of, I guess, a screenshot or like look like a briefcase or some kind of box or something with from Death Stranding with the Xbox branding on it. So I was just like, oh, okay, I didn't know what it was. And I didn't really pay attention at the time, but then obviously the next day it was officially announced. So it's coming out 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern, on August 23rd in the US, and then they have 1 a.m. for the UK and 10 a.m. for AEST. So I can't remember. I think you played this, right, Game Logic? I don't remember if you did or not, DB.
No, but Game Logic has been playing it on PC on and off. So
yeah, and I originally played it on PlayStation 5. And actually, both versions I've played have been the director's cut. So that's important to note. This is not the director's cut that's on PC. Now, depending on what resolution you play in and things like that, I don't really know that that's really that big of a difference. I have seen some people commenting as if that it's really a big deal that Xbox is getting the inferior version, so to speak. I think that's a little bit overly, unless you're playing at 4K with everything blinged out because you have an RTX 3090, I don't think it really makes a difference. I've got a 3080 Ti and a 3070 Ti. I think it will be fine. And truth be told, right, even in the director's cut on PC, I struggle to pick out the differences, right? You could you can kind of see them in some extra fidelity, I feel like, in the cutscenes, but that's not gameplay, right? That's just in the cinematics. So I think Xbox players will be fine. The problem, and the thing that's going to be interesting to note, is for Game Pass, we constantly talk about, well, for the Xbox platform in general, right? We constantly talk about somewhat of a starvation of the pipeline, right? That it hasn't been performing, that they're still on a ramp up. I've run calculations where I've predicted that I don't see all 23 studios, potentially all 30 studios, right, aligned to hitting the mark of a AAA first-party game coming out each quarter on the subscription service until into 2025. And so the interesting thing is when games like this come to Game Pass, it's difficult to tell if there's really large consumption, right? And so, here's a title that, I mean, quite frankly, didn't receive the consumption it should have received on the PlayStation platform, right? And from what I can tell, enjoys greater consumption actually on PC, where I think there's a demographic of gamer that has a palette that is a little more amenable to onboarding into something like this than your average PlayStation gamer, I would say. And so, what's going to be interesting to see is if the Xbox demographic is, even a strata, I don't want to necessarily say below, but, where there's a really large collection of gamers, right, including myself, right, even on the Xbox platform. I continue to play on the Xbox platform because I am there's a segment of my persona that is dedicated, that collects around shooters and racing games, and the Xbox platform is really, to me, a great platform to play on if you really love shooters and racing games. And so it's questionable to me what the uptake is going to be of Death Stranding. And so it will be interesting. And it'll be interesting to see if 505 ever reports anything. And that's another key thing to note, right? The whole reason, I mean, even I was struggling to understand it, right? SIE owns the IP for Death Stranding, but the publishing on PC has been by 505. My own suspicion of that is that Kojima would have been very reluctant to hand over the entire keys to the entire kingdom after his experience at Konami, and it wouldn't surprise me if he retained some publishing rights to negotiate on his own, and then negotiated those with 505, and then by inheritance, right, 505 was then permitted to go structure whatever publishing deals they wanted to. And since there's a pretty good relationship between 505 and Xbox games, as far as publishing goes, and Game Pass, here we are.
So other than graphical differences, is there anything else different as far as content for the director's cut?
I think with the director's cut, you get some skins and outfits. So I think in the base, you don't get any you just start with the standard, with Porter's, regular suit, and then you have to gain others throughout the game, I think. But with the director's cut, you get I think 3 variants of the suit. I never figured out exactly quite frankly, how to put those on the PlayStation 5 version. I'll probably say, but I do know on the PC version, I've played, I'm just on the outset of it, but I've played far enough into it that I've gotten into that room with Guillermo del Toro's character, and you can see the 3 different suits in the case on the wall, whereas I believe when you play just on the native base version, there's just one suit in that wall when you first enter the room until you gain access to some other suits.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I'll definitely have to check this one out when it comes out. Give it a try, I guess. I don't know. I've heard mixed things on it, but for the most part, I think it's been pretty positive that I've seen.
Yeah, I would say don't think of it as an indie walking simulator. Think of it, if you've ever played Mech Warrior, think of it like a mech game. That was how I ground myself when I realized that the locomotion was very similar to to a mech game, and then I focused less on the fact that it was a human being, and it felt very native and intuitive. Right, once I put myself in that mindset.
Cool. Yeah, definitely have to. I'll give it a try. Up next, we got some Diablo 4 news. The developer or Activision or not Activision, geez, Blizzard, in a development update this past week, has mentioned that there will be no loot boxes in Diablo 4, and instead they'll have a battle pass, kind of pretty much like everybody does, which should be or will be just cosmetics, and then also you'll be able to buy stuff through the in-game store. Now I don't remember Diablo 3, maybe DB if you can remind me. There wasn't any kind of in-game store, was there?
Well, I mean, technically, yes. It started with the whole
yeah,
the market.
Right.
No, there was not like an in-game store as we think of it in the year 2020, 2022.
Right.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So yeah, they just mentioned that it's going to be it's just going to be all cosmetics and skins and stuff like that. There will be no like being able to buy power ups or anything like that. So now they're talking about power ups, but is there any kind of PvP aspect to Diablo, or at least in 3? I thought it was always just like co-op, wasn't it?
No, I mean they have talked about that there's going to be in 4, there's going to be places for PvP.
Oh, okay. That's
and
right.
there is PvP in Immortal. That is something that they're building in. So yes.
Okay. Yeah, that's something else they mentioned in the article, how in Immortal, there's a lot of stuff that you got to pay for, and that one, I mean that's obviously a free to play game, so I mean the economy is a little bit different here, but this one will be obviously fully you have to pay for this one, Diablo 4, plus obviously with the battle pass, if you want to. Obviously there's going to be free tiers they mentioned in the article, and the developer mentioned. So just like any other battle pass, there's free stuff that you'll get, and the really, really good stuff is not going to be locked behind the battle pass, but we'll see how long that lasts, though. After the first couple seasons or so, because that always kind of, even with like Fortnite, now they're throwing different IPs, characters in their battle passes, and even in their subscription based tier that they have now too. So we'll see how long that lasts before someone will get special armor or whatever that you can only get through the battle pass. That's looks super good or whatever, but we'll have to see how this turns out. But it was just, and I thought they had mentioned that they were going to do battle passes before, or maybe they just, I don't know, maybe it wasn't official or something, but I guess it's official now that they've announced this. So
I think it paired with their announcements that they're pulling loot boxes from Overwatch, that in preparation for Overwatch 2, which is not going to have kind of traditional loot boxes, that they're pulling them, pulling the sale of them from the original Overwatch, and actually they're going to, so that piece there, I think this is kind of a 1-2, kind of getting out in front, given the amount of bad press around pay to win transactions related to Diablo Immortal that they're trying to message here.
Yeah.
Yeah, not only bad press, but actual legal hearings that they've been called to the floor for in European countries. Probably a
right?
good thing for
countries that they are not even releasing in because of those regulations. Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's true. Yeah, I always forget that. Yeah, in other countries they've all out banned after you got any kind of loot boxes in your game. So, all right. So yeah, I mean, hopefully, I don't remember if they mentioned this article, but when that was supposed to be released, or if they've even given a release date yet for Diablo 4. But definitely one I'll be looking at. I really did enjoy Diablo 3 when I finally got it.
It's a spring 2023 release, is what at least that was announced over the course of the summer.
Okay, cool. Man, 2023. It's going to be a big one, I think. All right, so up next, DB. You got some...
Yeah, I got some ugly news, right?
Yeah, not so good news.
No, but I think important to cover. And we spent a number of shows last year talking about the harassment situations around Activision Blizzard and the legal problems there, that earlier this year, IGN. I think it was right around the end of April, beginning of May, right around the same time as Reggie's kind of press tour for his book, that IGN had published a report on kind of the disparity in working conditions between contract workers and full-time employees. The people that worked in the lesser facilities on the other side of the campus and we're trying to get the red badges to get into the main building. And so this report from Kotaku kind of follows up and dovetails into that, which it really is much more about harassment of those contract testers and from the full-time employees and the sexual harassment of that. So within the article, Kotaku talked to at least 10 different employees over the last 8 to 10 years, kind of the Wii U to Switch generations, and they described a number of situations of both harassment and working conditions, or harassing workplace environments, but also sexual harassment directly from superiors and managers. They cited the challenges of gender discrimination as well, in terms of how you were more likely to get promoted as from a contract to a full-time employee as a male, and also that LGBTQ employees had an even harder time than females in terms of promotion and harassment as well. So a number of it's a pretty lengthy article. It mirrors a number of things that we have seen in other development studios and news stories over the past couple years, as these stories about working conditions and sexual harassment have come forward. During those times, Nintendo was pretty quiet, and I know that I will admit to thinking, the rosiness of the childhood innocence of Nintendo, right? And the reality of being part of the same industry and some of these practices. And, to Nintendo President of America, Doug Bowser's, appropriateness, he came out around the same time of this report and, denounced the actions, not denouncing the report, right? Talked about that these types of actions, regardless of when and how they happen, are not acceptable within our workplace environment. Whether or not there's anything that is done to change that, how much of this, of being able to shine light onto some of these starts to make that change. We've spent a lot of time last year talking about the potential for that change in a place like Activision Blizzard and whether or not that will come to fruition. So wanted to spend a little bit of time kind of bringing this to people's attention as well, because it unfortunately is one more in the litany of toxic work environments, at least within, and this is I will say that the piece is focused on contract employees and full-time employees and QA testers. So it doesn't get into and doesn't interview people in the design development, other places within Nintendo of America, or the Treehouse. Really is within the tester QA environment.
Yeah, I mean, this, like you mentioned, you think Nintendo, like, oh, this can't happen with them, but it's a corporate business, like it's going to happen, and not just with games, obviously, with other companies. But I was just thinking too, when you mentioned, like, these are contractors, it's got to be like even harder for those people to get heard too, because they're obviously going, they're secondhand kind of a thing. It's not directly through Nintendo or working with Nintendo, like their HR structure and all that. So it's got to be like even tougher for them to get heard, and it just stinks. Like I've seen issues too with contractors before and in the past. And how they're treated, and it's just I don't understand it. Like we're all working together, so we're trying to get things done. But unfortunately, this has to happen. Game Electric, I don't know if you had any comments or responses to this.
Yeah, one thing I want to mention, because a couple years ago we had a similar situation with Facebook in one of their subcontractors, or one of their groups of employees with one of their subcontractors. One, a subcontractor who's actually a competitor in my field. And so one of the things that I want to mention in this, and I'm not saying this to give Nintendo an out or Facebook an out, although the Facebook situation was a little different. So let me tighten that up and just specify it with Nintendo. So not to give Nintendo an out. However, these contractors have an employer. They are not employees of Nintendo. They have a company that they work for that has a management structure, that has an HR department. So it is not only a failure of Nintendo, it is also a failure of that contractor, who has employees who are deployed onto another company's site. And it's also a failure of their leadership if any of those employees have come forward and brought this to the attention of their employers, which would normally be the case. And for those employers to have the concerns of their employees go unheard or unaddressed. I have had similar situations, and I have pulled my employees off site, right? I have put a stop to all work, right? And gone to the primary and said, hey, this needs to be addressed and you need to fix this like now. Like even recently, right? In the times of like COVID and in the times of like changing presidential administrations, my employees have been on site with another company, and I work in a regulated industry where there are like things you can't do and behaviors that are unacceptable. And when those things have happened and my employees have called me, I've said, hey, time out, right? Like, I've picked up the phone, called the applicable manager and said, hey, we can either fix this now or it can become a stink, right? And so, when these things go down, and same thing with Activision Blizzard, right? Those testers of the QA department that were that had things happen to them. A lot of times and it kind of makes me angry at the journalists, right? Because what they do is they point the finger at the big company. But what they do when they do that is they completely give the subordinate contractor management layer a pass, right? And that's the thing that also needs to be called out. And when legal action's taken, like those are the people that also need to be held accountable.
Yeah, I think that's an important piece, right? It is a failure on both ends. Like it is a failure that the corporate structure of that on Nintendo's side, that proliferated over the course of a number of years. And it's also a failure that if the contractor was aware of it, that they either didn't address it or pushed it, didn't give it credence. One way or the other, they failed to take action on it to the benefit or to resolve how their employees were being treated. So yes, I think that's an important piece in all of these to acknowledge that there is blame to go around when a situation like this occurs.
Yeah, definitely. All right. Game Logic, let's have you take us out of the news section with some GeForce Now.
Yeah, let's end on a little less morose of a note. And so we have been covering, obviously, extensively cloud services, streaming services, subscription services on this podcast, but specifically cloud services in their delivery to gamers. So GeForce Now has gotten a fairly good reputation for its delivery to gamers, which really kind of surprises me because it's pretty expensive in comparison to other cloud streaming services. It's $20 a month for an RTX 3080 equivalent, and that gives you a maximum of like an 8-hour session. Now, most gamers probably don't play beyond an 8-hour session, so that should be fine. But it's still a thing, right? That it has that cap on it. Their middle tier, I think it's $15, and that gives you a 6-hour session. And I'm not sure if they specify what equipment you have access to there. And then there is a free tier, but to me, the free tier is basically useless because you sit and wait in a queue. So when you're going to start, it's not deterministic when your start time is, and then you only have an hour. And so that's just to kind of set table stakes on what the GeForce Now service is. But recently, for those at that $20 tier, they have enabled an additional mode when you are going through specific browsers. And so when you're going through Chrome and Microsoft Edge, which are both built on the Chromium substrate, I think there's another. I think there's another technology that's at the root of them, but both of them are essentially proprietary branches off of the Chromium open source project. And now you will have the ability to stream at 1440p and 120 frames per second, which I think is a big deal for PC gamers, because that's kind of where a lot of us kind of clump around as the best convergence of performance and detail. So there you go. If you are at that tier and you utilize those browsers, which I don't really know what other browser you would use. I mean, even if you do use Firefox or Opera, you're still probably running Windows, and so you have access to Microsoft Edge, and so you could. Now, obviously, you'll have to have a monitor that's capable of those resolutions, but it gives you some options. Coming down the pike, obviously, AMD will be releasing its cards, and simultaneously with the RTX 4000 series cards, and so in order to keep pace with AMD, you may see a bump in hardware specifications for availability in those different subscription tiers of RTX cards. So, promising times if you are a GeForce Now subscriber.
Yeah, that's really cool. Yeah, that's one service I've never tried. Did you ever try out the GeForce Now? I can't remember if you did or not.
I did, but I bounced off of it for the reasons that I mentioned, right? Just because,
pretty quick, yeah.
Like that baseline service is not conducive to my lifestyle. I think you guys know me fairly well enough to know that I'm not going to sit in any queue for a 1 hour time for a cloud streaming service. Like, it needs to be something that's on demand, and that's one of the reasons why I preferred Stadia. And then there's also the whole thing of GeForce Now. It's not a it's not a game smorgasbord warehouse, right? Digital warehouse. It's you have access to the games that you own, and that's not necessarily ubiquitous. So you can own a game, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it's available in GeForce Now. So there's just too many. To me, there were too many caveats that the whole point of the service is maximum convenience, right? And then the expense, right? $15 a month for only a cloud streaming service is a little overly to me, and much less $20 a month when you compare it to Game Pass for $15. Game Pass Ultimate for $15 a month, where you're able to play on two different platforms and have that kind of digital smorgasbord of a warehouse of games that are made available to you. It just didn't really pass the smell test for me price-wise. And Stadia was, to me, a better deal, right, at $10 a month, where you would get some free games. Now, the only upside to me of if I went down the course of GeForce Now is I believe you can play GeForce Now on an nVidia Shield, which I do have. And actually, there are some hardware acceleration enhancements that are available for that. And so, for a certain type of consumer, if you went that, then you wouldn't even have to have, a PC, right, to take advantage of GeForce Now of any type. You could come in even cheaper, right, with an nVidia Shield. Particularly if you went with the higher end version.
All right, so that's the end of our news section. So let's jump into our rest of our games we've been playing those last few weeks. I only got the one this past week. I actually jumped full tilt back into Fortnite. Pretty much done with Ark for now, at least. I play a little bit with my son here and there. He likes to do some of these other, they're like not dedicated servers, or at least like official servers, I should say. He likes doing these other ones where like there's only like one resource you need to get, and then you can like get everything else. So he's been doing that. So I've been kind of bouncing off. We kind of left our other worlds or maps that we've done. So I was like, let me jump back into Fortnite, which good timing because now they have doing a crossover with Dragon Ball. Dragon Ball Super, but they got some characters kind of from like all over the Dragon Ball series right now, and they kind of have this like it's like a sub battle pass almost of just Dragon Ball items that you can get, along with stuff you can purchase in the in-game store. And I think I don't know if they've really done this before. I've seen it in Fall Guys a lot since I've been playing Fall Guys, and every once in a while they kind of do it in Rocket League too. But I think this is one of the first times I've seen this like sub battle pass that they've kind of thrown out there, and this is totally free. Like I don't even think you need like the regular battle pass to access it, and you just get like different emotes and like the stickers and all these other things that you can get, back blings and stuff. So it's kind of cool that they're giving out some free stuff while they're doing this crossover. So I've been doing that a lot this past week, solo and with one of my friends too that we've been playing, and I've played with I think a couple of his cousins yesterday, I believe it was, or a couple days ago. So we're jumping full back into that. I just still playing no builds. I think I played build with my friend maybe like a month ago, and I actually didn't do too bad. I think I actually won one of the games that whole night that we played. I think like a handful or maybe like half a dozen games. So it's kind of nice that I can go, I can jump back and forth in between both those modes, and obviously there's all these other modes you can do, creative stuff, but I usually don't jump into there unless like it's challenge specific for something. But no, I'm having a lot of fun going back in Fortnite. I took a nice little break, and I think the season's winding down. I think there's still like another 3 weeks or so, sometime in September, or maybe 2 weeks when it ends. So it's kind of a long season. This last season, I think it was like 4, maybe even 4.5 months. Instead of like the 3 that it usually is, so which I think they usually do now these last couple of years, just kind of giving everybody a break. I think they even take like a 2-week break where it's like, other than just some minor stuff that they release in the in-game store, there's really like no big updates or anything like that. So hopefully this coming up the fall here, we'll get stuff ramping up again. But other than that, that's pretty much all I've been having, other than like Rocket League a little bit here and there too. So speaking of Rocket League and I guess the Switch, because I'm playing Fortnite on all different systems, DB, you have one more Switch game that you're going to talk about?
I do. So after Game Logic, after our conversation last week, you convinced me of your conversation around Doom 3. So this week with QuakeCon and sales, I ended up picking up Doom 3 for the PSVR. But I have not had a chance to fire it up because Madden. Really, because most of my week has been filled with football. But this weekend, with some family time, I did get a chance to dip back into Switch Sports. Picked it up on a sale, a physical copy of it, and so hadn't played it since the launch week. And they do pseudo, not really battle passes, but like once you level up, you get a chance to, a themed in-game item, whether it's equipable something or a skin or, a piece of clothing or a hairstyle. And they started with like 3 different kind of cards of those. And now they are up to 18. But there's only still 3 at a time. So now it's like 16, 17, and 18. And there's 4 more days left on 16. And then, which was interesting to come back months later to see what had changed, and that was about it that had changed. They haven't released any other sports in it yet. It's still pretty thin if you're playing by yourself, but playing with other people in the same room it's still a lot of fun. Like playing with friends or family in the same room where you can team up on volleyball or tennis or go bowling against a group of other people. It's still a lot of fun. It was multiple hours of cheering and jeering as well. So that was my my family game time with Switch Sports.
Do you have a particular sport that you like the most or favorite?
If we're playing together, my son and I enjoy volleyball together, just because of the kind of the difference of timing. Yeah. The spikes and blocks and things like that. We're getting better at the nuances of bowling, but it's always interesting with bowling because it's 16 people that you can pretty much tell who's a real person and who's a bot by the time they throw the first 2 balls based on their score. So
nice. Yeah, I have to get back to that one. And I think golf is the one they're going to release this fall.
That's what they said, yeah.
Yeah. And potentially other ones, I guess, in the future. So we'll see. I think every quarter maybe or so they were going to do, or maybe a couple more. I thought they had said. So
We'll see. I mean, considering they were going to launch, they took 5 months versus 4 to launch the next wave of Mario Kart tracks. So yeah, I mean that's Nintendo timing is not necessarily related to the Gregorian calendar. So
yes, much like Windows when you're copying or downloading something, you never know what the time's going to be. All right, Game Logic. If you want to take us out here with, well, you got a bunch listed here, but I think you're only going to talk about like 1 or 2 here, I believe. Or I mean, you can talk as many as you want, but.
Yeah, I don't have to talk too much more about Death Stranding. I am playing at 1440p on a 144 hertz monitor, getting 144 frames per second on an RTX 3070 Ti. I said that the graphical improvements, may very well just be marginal. That being said, on the PlayStation 5, when I saw that game, I said that and still hold that game on the PlayStation 5 is the most beautiful game of this generation that I've personally seen. And I would hold nearly the same true on PC, right? It's the upgrades might be slight, but they are fairly remarkable. And when you put that in conjunction, with it's an incredibly high caliber voice acting cast. I would contend maybe the likes of which have never been seen or previously assembled on another title. And provided you get past the kind of at times hokey Kojima script. Which, quite honestly, I mean, is not as full-on Kojima as it was, at times in the Metal Gear series. There's kind of some weirdisms in the fiction, in the mythology that's woven into that story, but in general, it's not that horrifically off-putting. Whereas, some of the other things have been a little problematic. I think, and I'm playing this through the Epic Game Store version, and so I did have one crash. I suspect because I've had that crash twice with very similar symptoms across a couple of games, from different stores. I suspect it's an nVidia driver problem with the most recent round of drivers that were released in August. But we'll keep an eye on it. But I'm very happy to be making another play right into that game. Super impressed with it. As I have been on other platforms. One of the other things I've been playing is I started Portal Companion Collection on the Nintendo Switch. That is a game.
So when did you pick this up? Was this in your new kind of Switch rotation, or did you? Okay.
Yeah, fairly recently. I think the game's like $20, so it's interesting that Valve, because the game just came out like in June, so it's super interesting that Valve could be bothered to put a game out on this platform when their focus is definitely obviously spending time on the Stream Deck. So I don't know. One may wonder maybe it was. Since at the end of the day, the Android kernel is the same or similar to Linux, and so one might wonder maybe this was part of their effort to get everything up and running through Proton on the Stream Deck. But the game is fun and interesting, and you get Portal and Portal 2. I've started off playing in Portal. I've never actually played Portal 2 just because when I played Portal, it was an interesting experience. To me, it was kind of a lightning in the bottle experience. I got into it on a Sunday afternoon. I think in like the spring or summer. I remember playing, with the windows open in my computer room in that apartment. And I just started playing, and I just played all the way through. Right, I just sat there for six and a half hours. And played, ordered pizza, right, I was single at the time, it was a great sunset, and had a good time with it, and it was a very kind of seminal experience, but having done it, I was like, I don't know that I really need to play Portal 2, I don't expect there to be that much to this formula, so it'll be interesting to play Portal 2, in portable, in a portable format, regardless of the graphical fidelity, this game kind of shows its age in design. I won't talk about it tonight, but one of the other things I've been playing is Neon White. which kind of has some similar aspects to it, just in terms of it's a very level oriented kind of first person shooter type of game where your whole point is to get from one end of a level to the next in a certain time, with some kind of physics puzzles aspects to it. I also played a game way back in the day called Tech 3000, which was kind of similar on PC. And one of the things is this as kind of cutely unique as Portal is, it kind of shows its age in terms of design. I still need to kind of fish around for it. I have spent some time fishing around for it, but I was sure that you could run in this game, but it doesn't appear that that's the case. So it just kind of feels like a very, having played Mirror's Edge and Neon White and some of these others, it just feels like a very lumbering, prodigious, right, kind of locomotion physics model. So, I mean, but it is what it is. It has its unique charm to it. So, I'll continue chewing through it. It's a game that's great to have in portable format because, again, it's that level-oriented thing where you go on, you play a level. If you're on travel and people all of a sudden decide they're going out to see a movie or going out to grab dinner or something, it's something that's very easy to slap the switch into standby and for you to not be too worried about kind of restarting from wherever you are. The other thing that I've been playing that I'll talk about tonight is Yakuza Like a Dragon on the PlayStation 5. Much like I did when I got my Xbox, I was signing up for... Well, I was actually already a member of PlayStation Now still, because my subscription was running until it ran out. But
PlayStation Now or PlayStation Plus?
So I was already a member of PlayStation Plus, which put me on PlayStation Plus Essential. And then I, again, looked at the thing. I was like, well, I got to do PlayStation Plus. I mean, am I really price sensitive to the cost to upgrade? No. So I upgraded to PlayStation Plus Premium. Now, the thing I didn't like about... what's up, DBQ?
So... Are you playing this streaming on a PC, or did you pick up a Playstation 5?
I did pick up a PlayStation 5. Yes.
Okay.
So,
okay.
Amazingly enough, I had just opened up Twitter, and literally somebody on my timeline had just posted that PlayStation 5s were available via Sony PlayStation Direct. Literally, I saw this 6 minutes after the person posted it. I just immediately logged in, actually from my phone. And made the purchase without any contention, without any refreshing necessary to get in line or getting in the queue, and I was able to get my my purchase through, and in a much preferable fashion than last time. I was also able to reorder all of the accessories that I wanted. The first time I had a PlayStation 5 at the beginning of the generation, it took me months to get a hold of the accessories because they were also in scarce supply. So I was very happy that I was able to get a hold of everything. Actually, the other thing I was very pleased about, I was kind of dubious when these things first came out in comparison to the Xbox Design Labs approach. I do have another Design Labs controller coming in, but I was able to get a Cosmic Red PlayStation 5 DualSense controller, so I was going to order a second controller anyway, so it was just nice to have options other than just ordering a white one.
Well, welcome back fully to the console family, now that you have all three in your possession again. So,
yeah.
Anyhow, back to
yes.
Yakuza Like a Dragon and the JRPG-ness of it.
So like I said, I signed up for PlayStation Plus Essential and pulled this down as the first game for me to play on PlayStation Now. I did, by the way, also, I actually got the Horizon Forbidden West bundle, just because that was the only option. Also, this time I actually went with the full disc version, not the PlayStation Digital. And I find it very curious whether or not I will ever use that disc drive the same as the Xbox Series X. I don't know that I'll actually ever use it, other than maybe to play a Blu-ray. But I pulled down Yakuza Like a Dragon. It does have a PlayStation 5 version, so that's good. it's very interesting. Again, I tried out a couple of the Yakuza games when they came to Game Pass on the Xbox Series S. The combat motif is a jarring change. It is. I mean, I know Swiss knows exactly what it's called, and I'm pretty sure you do, DBQ2. It has this kind of Final Fantasy-esque kind of faux.
It's like a active time battle.
Yes, right. That's it. Active time battle. So it kind of comes off as if it's turn based, but then there are some kind of timing. I'll refer to them as hitbox oriented things in terms of a time window that you can pull off moves that are either counters or dodges or whatever. It is weird, but also kind of relaxing. Not quite as relaxing as straight up turn based. And if you haven't played a game like that before, which I had never really participated in these active time battle combat motifs, it can definitely be frustrating, right? And it can definitely also feel, frustrating even from the perspective of, not only, not doing it well, but just in terms of feeling like you're randomly button mashing, right, and trying to pull off things within a time window. But in comparison to normal Yakuza combat, it's actually a little less stressful, I think, than some of the Yakuza things where there's that combat is very similar to me to kind of the Shadow of Mordor type of combat, where if you button press one too many times, you wind up pulling off a move that really gets you in a bad tactical situation, and then kind of having to pull back from it. So it's been interesting. I feel like the dialogue and some of the acting is a little less. I don't know if less Eastern is there's a little. I think there's a little bit better localization maybe than there has been in other Yakuza games. So I am.
How far are you into it? I think I played like 2 hours, 3 hours.
Yeah, I'm just kind of in the outset of it. So the character hasn't even gotten like his frizzy afro do at this point. So it's a curiosity and interesting. It's very neat for those games to be on. I can't remember. Have the Yakuza games been on PlayStation?
Oh yeah, that's where the original was ported. Okay. I mean, that's where the first Yakuza with its like Michael Madsen voice cast and everything else.
Okay.
In the PlayStation 2 era.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So right, it came to Xbox later.
Yes.
And under the auspices of I guess Game Pass.
Game Pass
in a lot of ways. So it's been neat. It's been interesting to kind of toe dip and participate in the back catalog of PlayStation Plus. I really told myself I didn't have a lot of nostalgia or fondness and therefore a need to be subscribed to that back catalog. But it's there and it's interesting, and it may give me some opportunity to kind of participate in some games that I haven't really played in before, because I just don't have that nostalgic feel for a deep amount of experience in the PlayStation back catalog. So it'll kind of be interesting to see how that goes.
So you said when you signed up, you went to Essential, right? And then you went up to Premium. Was there a reason? I mean, what was the reason to go?
I was already at Essential. So when I got rid of my PlayStation 5, and I mean this has happened before. This happened when I got rid of my PlayStation 4, actually. So you're subscribed. So you can't cancel and like get your money back for the amount of time left on your subscription. The only thing you can do is turn off auto renew. So my subscription was actually paid up to run out through the end of this year. And so when I came back, I was at PlayStation Essential, at PlayStation Plus Essential, and same thing, right? It was like I had to do PlayStation Plus Essential to get cloud saves and online multiplayer for paid games, etc. And the amount for me to bump up to premium was like $50, and I was like, okay, whatever. I'll try it out to bump up to PlayStation Premium. The one thing I'll mention is a couple of the experiments I did. First of all, with both the Xbox Series X and the PlayStation, because when the network outage happened with Xbox Series X, there was a lot of hubbub around on social media about how you initially sign in on the Xbox, and so I wanted to run some tests. It is actually true you cannot really sign in and start up your Xbox without network connectivity. You hit a point in that initiating workflow where you have to attach to either wireless or wired network connectivity, or you can't proceed forward. The PlayStation 5 does give you an off ramp. It allows you. It has a do this later pip that you can select on the UI so that you can actually sign in without network connectivity. And I ran both of those tests with no Ethernet cord plugged in. Now, once you sign in, I don't really know that you can do that much of anything on a PlayStation 5. I didn't run the experiment that far, but it was just a curiosity that I wanted to check. And some improvements a little bit in terms of the store UI, in terms of kind of differentiating what a PlayStation 4 version is and a PlayStation 5 version is. Things that they didn't have at the beginning of the generation. Now, the one thing I don't like with the PlayStation 5 setup now is I still dislike the store setup because it doesn't really make you feel like you're really going into a separate, discrete, portal, which to me is not desirable given the fact that you could spend money right in that interface. I prefer a very clean transition that kind of firmly informs the user that you're now off the desktop UI. But now you also have PlayStation Plus all the way to the left, right? And so that's one way to access the catalog, and then you can also access it via your game library, right, which is all the way to the right. So I don't know. I'm trying to see how I settle into that. I think the same thing is true if I think about it for Xbox. You can actually access the entirety of the Game Pass library through the Game Pass app on Xbox, but then you have exposure to the same catalog, right, if you go into the library UI. So I don't know. It just felt more native on Xbox, whereas it just feels a little weird on PlayStation. Maybe because the differentiation is horizontal rather than vertical, and that kind of makes a slight navigation difference to me. But there you are. It's a pretty huge catalog. It's for when you're on PlayStation Premium, it's 400 and it's almost 500 titles that are in there available, and that's just the regular premium. But then there's a separate one for legacy, for the legacy library or whatever. I'm not sure if that's concurrent within as a subset of the 462 or if it's a completely separate set of titles, but but it exists within the UI, with a few different means to get to it.
All right, cool. And you got the PS5. You got the disc or discless?
I got the disc.
Version.
Yeah.
Okay.
I figured with the Xbox Series X, I just wanted to be kind of at parity, so I just figured. I mean, plus I was because I was going in through PlayStation Direct and I didn't know how much of a shark frenzy it was. I was just let me just matriculate through this as quickly as possible, right before
Get anything you can.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, I was just wondering. Nothing behind that. All right, so I think that's it for our games for the day. There was one other game I actually just thought about, but I'm going to keep that for next week because I'm going to play it a little bit more before I speak on it a little bit more. Something I've played before, but we'll move on to Pix Plays. We're not going to report on that, but I believe next week we'll get to that. We got the remasters that we're doing, going back and seeing if any of these remasters we might play were worth the effort. I'm still playing Command & Conquer Remaster. I just haven't mentioned that because I just want to save it for the Pix Plays. And I haven't had a chance to get to Red Faction. I'm not sure if I'll be able to or not, but at least I'll have Command & Conquer. I don't know if you guys, DB or Game Logic, if you've had a chance to play anything or had any thoughts on what you might play.
I think, well, I'm either going to dive into one of the Saints Row remasters because next week is a new Saints Row,
Yep.
or I might pick, I don't know if it counts as a remaster, is that Disney Infinity 2.0 and 3.0, actually all three Disney Infinities now have a gold edition that are out on Steam that just bundle all the characters together and all the DLC stuff into one kind of digital pack, which is super convenient. They also are Steam Deck rated. So, but that might be another option that I dive into as well.
Nice.
And I've got a few things that are still going to be in the rotation as I head into next week. Obviously, Death Stranding Director's Cut is in there. Crisis Remastered is still in my rotation. And Doom 3 is still in my rotation. Actually, Doom 3 I've dropped out of my rotation. So, but there's a good chance, I'll continue down the path of Death Stranding Director's Cut and or Crisis Remastered.
Nice. Cool. All right. I think that is it for tonight. Unless anybody has any other comments on anything we've talked about or any other games. All right. Thank you, DB. Thank you, Game Logic, for joining me tonight. Game Logic, you got something? Oh, I thought you were unmuting there. Like you're unmuting. All right. Thank you, everybody, for watching for tonight. This has been episode 255 of the Enough to Keep Going podcast. I am TowelMaster99. Please take care of yourselves out there. Play those games, whatever it happens to be. And we will see you next week.